Okay, all right, I'm not late. Well, maybe just a tiny little bit late. I am back, and I'm just getting organized, just making sure my sound check is working all right, the stream is operating, doing what it's supposed to be doing, all those normal things that I usually do with a live stream of some kind. And once I know that everything is working properly, we'll get started. Okay, sound is coming through. Now I've left the window open, so you might hear cicadas in the background or a little bit of background noise, but I think the sound will bounce less if I do that. Okay, good, that's worked well. Now if you're re-watching the live stream later on, you'll find that there is a start time, so you can get past all of my sound check, and while I'm waiting for people to jump into the room, you can get past all of that if you want to. So by all means do that, that's fine with me. Now if you haven't ever been part of my live streams before, normally what I do is I present everything first, and once I've presented everything for my presentation, I then open it up for questions in the live chat at the end of my presentation. So even though I might sign out, I still give you an opportunity to give feedback, ask questions, and just have a chat about the CoS of Strahd or whatever it is that I'm talking about. And today is the CoS of Strahd, as it happens. Okay, so I'm pretty much ready. You guys will let me know if the sound or the video is not working correctly. I do have a lot of slides. I have like 30 different slides for today, which means this is a very complicated video to live stream. Therefore, if I don't check the live chat as I'm going, there's a reason, because I'm a bit busy. So my suggestion to you is, if there's any issues right now, punch them into live chat, because I want to get started. And I've got about 4 pages of material to cover today, so that's quite a lot really for any kind of live stream or any kind of video. Anyway, seems to be all working fine, so I think we can probably get started. Hi Joe, how's it going? Thanks for showing up. Okay, let's go then. Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons 5e. And as it happens, we are going to talk about one of the pre-made adventures that I personally think are one of the best adventures I've ever played. Now, for those of you who have showed up for the CoS of Strahd, in particular, this is about preparing for CoS of Strahd. I love the CoS of Strahd. I've run the original Ravenloft adventure using the 5e rules, and then when this came out, I ran this as well. So I can tell you now I have a lot of experience with this particular adventure. Not only that, I am highly invested in this particular adventure. So therefore, you will get a lot of information from me. Now, I want to make it quite clear right now, if anybody is confused, this particular video is designed for the Dungeon Master. This is a Dungeon Master guide. That means there will be spoilers in this video. So if you are playing the CoS of Strahd or plan to be playing as a character in the CoS of Strahd and you're not Dungeon Mastering, this is the time to jump out, go and check out some of my other videos, and then come back later on and you can watch this video when you've already played through the CoS of Strahd, because there's going to be spoilers from every part of the adventure, more than likely at some point, and I don't want to sort of ruin it for you. And I know your Dungeon Master won't want that as well, so I suggest this is the time to leave. Okay, so here are some of the basics. Now I'm going to cover as quickly as I can all the generic stuff that you normally do as a Dungeon Master, because there's quite a lot of different things that you can do or you usually do as a Dungeon Master, and so I'm covering a lot of information you've probably heard before from other people anyway. But let's start off and deal with that stuff first. You will need a copy of the CoS of Strahd. The CoS of Strahd is one of those adventures that is not freely available. There's no legal free PDF or book that you can purchase. It's not available on the internet for free somewhere. Part of the adventure that's Death House, and I've already done a video on preparing for Death House, and you're welcome to go and download that. That won't give you everything you need. So you will need to actually pick up a copy. Now I know you can get illegal copies, but I'm not going to give you a link, so don't ask me to give you a link for something like that. That's just not going to happen. So you will need a copy of the book. You will need to read the adventure at least once. I would say at least once, but there are a couple of ways you can get around having to read the entire book, because it's quite a a lot of information to take on board all at once, right? And it doesn't read like a novel. It reads like an exercise book. Or if you don't read the book all the way through, then read the key story points from each chapter. Go to each chapter and read each story point and aspect to that, and sort of make sure you have a fair idea of what's going on. I would recommend, if you are going to pick and choose what you read, that you read pages 5 through to 94. That will give you the main guts that you will definitely need to know about. And then page 207, and then the appendix. The appendices are really important, okay? These are vital to the adventure. So those are the parts that I would say you definitely need to read in advance if you're not going to read the entire book. And I want to make it clear right now, I did not read the entire Curse of Strahd when I first ran the adventure. I did not have time. I tried to prepare as much as I could, but it's a lot of pages, 200 plus pages, so hence I did not read the entire thing. So I talk from experience in terms of recommending the pages you read. You will need to go and read the player's handbook or the core rules. So go find the core rules or the player's handbook and try to digest as much of that as you possibly can. You need to have a basic understanding of the core rules for Dungeons & Dragons 5e, otherwise it's going to be really, really difficult to run this adventure. As far as I know, there are no major errata issues with this book. So when you pick up the book, you shouldn't have to worry about downloading corrections and errors that might have taken place. What you might find in the book is that there is blurring that occurs in the book from certain pages, but in terms of the content there, it's all pretty much solid stuff. There shouldn't be any major errors in there that you will find will trip you up later on. My advice to you is, once you have a chance to do all of that, go through and it's time to start photocopying some stuff. Photocopy the player's handouts. Those are all in the back of the book and the appendix, and you want to sort them. I used a paper clip to clip everything together so I could find things quickly and easily, so it didn't sort of slow me down. So that's what I would suggest you do. You could use a bull clip to clip them together, but you definitely want to photocopy them, cut them out so that they're sort of a bit tidier, and then clip them with like a paper clip or bull clip or some other device, whatever what suits your fancy. The next major aspect is, as a general rule, this is usually the sort of advice I give for everything when it comes to preparing any kind of an adventure whatsoever, and that is go and photocopy the monster and NPC or non-player character stat blocks. Okay, all of the ones that you're going to need to access, I would suggest going and photocopy them so you don't have to flip back to the back of the Curse of Strahd to find them when they come up. Yet you still need to be open at a particular page to be able to sort of communicate the information and find the information for that part of the adventure. So that's why I'm saying photocopy the monster and the NPC stat blocks from the book. You could also go and photocopy some of the monster stat blocks that you will be using in the adventure from the monster manual. Now, when it comes to photocopying something like a character sheet for players, I'm of the opinion that it should be the players who take the initiative and actually go to some effort and spend their money to go and get the character sheets. That's my view. You do not have to do it that way. If you want to provide pre-generated characters for them, if you want to provide them with a character sheet, that's fine. I always suggest to people when they show up with no character sheet, I say, look, if you've got data on your phone, or before you show up, make sure you download the app on your phone called 5th Edition Character Sheet. And you can build a character in 2 minutes. It's nice and easy, and we don't need to worry about you having a piece of paper to write your character on. But you should have plenty of blank paper anyway. Now, all of those monster stat blocks and NPC stat blocks that you have copied or made photocopies of, I want you to cut them out and then glue them onto a piece of card or a cereal box or cardstock or something like that. as a quick reference. I know a lot of people think that index cards, writing on an index card, is a much better idea. I don't recommend that. It takes more time. Photocopying, cutting things out and sticking them on a piece of cardboard. You don't even have to stick it on a piece of cardboard. You can just leave it on the paper, right? I think that is a much faster and more efficient use of your time. And your time is valuable. Okay, let's start talking about Strahd. Now the thing about Strahd is there is a very large section in the Curse of Strahd. And there's a reason, because his name is on the front of the book. It's not called Ravenloft, it's called the Curse of Strahd. So become familiar with Strahd von Zarovich. Make sure you know that character intimately. So read that section thoroughly and make sure you digest it. And then once you've done that, make Strahd your own NPC. So in other words, whatever's written in the book is great, but I want you to change it. Consider this is your starting point. It is now fluid from now on. So whatever you do before you even start your game or while you're running your game, Strahd is fluid, and Strahd will do what you need Strahd to do to make the story more interesting for you and for your players. So make Strahd your own. I can't really stress that enough. I think it's very hard for a lot of people to understand that the adventure you are running, the Curse of Strahd, this adventure is not about Barovia. This adventure is about the vampire Strahd. So make sure you focus on Strahd and everything else is secondary. Okay, what about when it comes to taking notes? That can be a bit complicated. How do I do that? I think probably the easiest way I have found when it comes to taking notes is I get those small post-it notes and I make notes, just key points on whatever section of the book I am currently sort of making notes on in the story. It might be to do with an NPC, it might be something to do with a trap, it might be to do with DCs, it might be just basic story information or character information, stuff that I might find difficult to scan through the pages and find quickly, because there are a few walls of text in this book. There are text sections that are pretty heavy. This book has got a lot of content, so it's hard sometimes to find the information. Now, I'm going to say that this book is well organized, but there's so much, it's so dense, and there's so much information, you really will want to take some sort of notes, and post-it notes are great for doing that. Use a shorthand, make sure you're just writing down bullet points, the important stuff, not all the superfluous bits and pieces that you don't really need to know about. You don't need to make notes on absolutely everything, everywhere, just the things that you might forget and need to have reference at some point. Right, it's time to start looking at monsters and how we deal with them. If you haven't had a lot of experience with Dungeons and Dragons, you might sort of struggle with this. But my advice to you is have a basic understanding of monsters and NPC battle tactics and strategies, even tactics outside of combat, what they might do before a combat. How will they avoid combat? Will they engage in combat? Will they flee? Will they fight to the death? Those sorts of things are things you want to sort of think about. Now, I have plenty of monster tactic videos that you can go and check out. I don't have every single monster that you will encounter with the Curse of Strahd, but there's plenty of content there that you can use to help reference and figure out what you're going to do. Now, there's also a very useful website, and I have provided it down in the description for those of you who want to go and access it. Check out the Monsters Know. This is a website done by a guy who's spent quite a lot of time thinking about the monster tactics for Dungeons & Dragons 5e. I've talked about him before. My suggestion is go and check out his stuff. It will help you, particularly if you're not sure what to do with a monster. Okay, there's also Sly Flourish's website, which is also a really good reference. He's got some solid advice for running the Curse of Strahd and using some of the monsters as well. Here's where it starts to get interesting. Now, I've provided a link in the description for Sly Flourish as well. So if you're worrying about trying to find that information, it all should be down in the description. And if it's not, you're going to let me know and I'll make sure it's there. I am a movie buff. I'm a fan of movies. I love them. I'm right into them. So I focus a lot on them rather than other things. You know, books are good, but I love movies, and it's something that sort of I use to sort of put myself to sleep. My suggestion to you is watch lots of horror movies, in particular old vampire movies. There are a couple of vampire movies I would suggest that you avoid, and those would be the Twilight series. The books and the movies, I would suggest that you avoid them. The kind of vampire they are talking about there in those movies and books is not the vampire that you are really running in your adventure, unless, of course, that's the sort of style of play you and your players prefer. But I wouldn't go and watch the Twilight series. Go and watch something else. Some of the older movies are probably really good. I have selected an image from Fright Night, because one, it's horror and it's humour, and it's quite scary in places. There's some jump scares, there's some scary aspects to it. It knows how to do that, but it also has a sense of dark humour to it. So that's why I selected that particular image. This adventure will cover probably from about level 1 to level 10. You might finish, that's sort of here or there. You might finish a little bit with a little bit more XP if you drop in a few more random encounters, or they fight literally everything, or you award a bit of extra XP for doing role-playing. You might finish at a lower level than 10. It's possible to have some sort of variation in that, but about roughly from about level 1 through to 10, and then you should be done. Now, when it comes to maps, and there's a lot of maps in this adventure, you've got your pick. Go and check out a website called Mike Shaley. Now, Mike Shaley is the one he's got high resolution maps that you can download. They are not free. You do have to pay for those maps, unfortunately. You can Google and find a lot of the maps on the internet without having to pay for them, but they won't be high resolution maps. So Mike Shaley, I've put the website down in the description so you can access that if you want to go and find his stuff and you want the really high quality stuff. Most of the maps are pretty easy to read and understand, but there is one map in particular that you will probably struggle with. It is renowned for being difficult to understand, and that is Castle Ravenloft. Castle Ravenloft is a bit tricky. And as you can see from the picture you're looking at right now, Jeremy Crawford is holding up the map, and you can see there are multiple levels. It's isometric, and it's all over the place. There's secret doors, there's passageways, there's traps, there's all sorts of things going on. So and there's staircases everywhere. It can be a little bit hard to figure out where one location leads, even though the map is probably, I would say this map is better and easier to understand than the original from the original Ravenloft. And that's only because, one, it's coloured and the way they've shaded it, and there's a couple of differences in there that made it easy, and I think that's to do more with the labelling of the map than anything else. So just remember, you need to do a little bit of time. I actually had to spend probably mucking around while I was doing other things, watching YouTube and so forth. I probably had to look at that map for a good hour or so before I sort of figured out what was going on. You might be able to do it faster. I'm not so bright. So that's the maps. Now here's the one factor I usually say with most adventures, but this one is even more vital than any other adventure because of the nature of Curse of Strahd, and that is you need to have a session 0. And I can't actually stress this more than anything else, because you've got to understand it is vital for this adventure that you run a session 0, because it's going to help bind it all together. But not only that, the adventure you have selected to run is not your standard Dungeons and Dragons fantasy. It is in fact a horror. It's a horror story. There are themes and elements to it that are humorous and fantastical, but it's a horror story, okay? So you will need to sort of make sure your players know what they're getting themselves into. Now, I did a session 0, And I explained to everybody that would probably be quite a lot of character death, and you should be prepared for a lot of characters to die. So use those dark gifts. There's lots of information on the Dungeon Masters Guild on dark gifts to bring their characters back into play if their character dies, rather than have a shuffling through new characters, and it doesn't really sort of work very well, because character death is quite possible in this type of adventure. It's horror, it's deadly. Curse of Strahd is a deadly adventure. Now, of course, you can tame things down, but you detract from the possibility of actually scaring. The whole idea is to scare the players, not the characters, but the players. If you scare the players, you scare the characters. I've said this before. Make sure you establish with the players how character death is going to work in your game. I did all of that up front. I explained that when they played the game, now you do not need to do it this way. I explained to them that when your character dies, it's going to go into the mist. It doesn't leave Barovia. It is still around, but you're not currently alive. Your character, you're playing the same character. No matter what, you are playing the same character. That was how I did it. You do not have to do it that way. The reason I did it is because my understanding and thought pattern was this. Barovia is a place you can't escape. It's like a nightmare. It's like a horror story that you can't wake up from. So death is not the worst thing that can happen to your character. And I proved it to my players many, many, many times. I've done videos on character death options. Go and check that out if you want. So the characters came back in many different forms if they couldn't do it themselves. So just make sure it's clear to players. Now, I had one player in particular, we played for a few sessions, and he said, Fred, I can't continue playing this campaign. It's just not for me. I need something else. I need more Dungeons & Dragons vanilla. This is just way too dark, and I don't enjoy it. And that will happen to you. You may well find a person in your group who just can't deal with that level of death and darkness in the adventure. They're trying to get away from that. Maybe it's just too much. Curse of Strahd is a sandbox. It is like a sandbox within a sandbox. There are little sandboxes within a bigger sandbox, so try to read ahead some of the basic locations if you can. So you've got a general idea of what's going to happen when they go to some place. Now, you can slow them down with random encounters, so it gives you time to prepare, but that's one of my pieces of advice to you. And next, let's talk about the fact that if you run your adventure and you start sort of just making everything dark and horrible and gritty and realistic, it's going to be very hard. It's a lot of tension. It's exhausting for anybody. I don't know if you've ever watched a horror movie before, and if it's actually scaring you, you're quite tired at the end of it. So running the Curse of Strahd like this means you really will need to change the darkness of it. It's going to be dark, but bring in humour. It's really important to use humour. It helps release player tension. So pay attention to page 7, and that has the marks of horror. It's got really good advice on how to do this. Now, the image I've pulled up is of Ash from The Evil Dead, and I thought probably the best example of dealing with horror and combining humour at the same time was something like the Evil Dead movies. I don't know if you've watched them before. If you haven't, that's a good place to go, because it will give you a whole lot of really useful information and ideas to help run the game. So keep your game sessions fairly short, shorter than your normal sessions would be. If you don't do this, you'll probably exhaust your players, and if you're not too careful, you won't just exhaust them. You may well find out a week later or whenever they come back that they suffered bad dreams. Now, I know you're laughing your head off, but I had a couple of players who had bad dreams after they would have a session with me, and a lot of them were reporting they were quite tired at the end of 2 or 3 hours of play. So 2 or 3 hours of play, any more than that, I think you're starting to really sort of push it. And I did also find a couple of players did actually say, look, Fred, I had nightmares. I had bad dreams. So just bear that in case. That can happen. Be understanding. All right, now let's talk about the Mist of Barovia. A lot of people just assume the mist is just the border and that's it, and there's nothing else to it. But it's much, much more than that. The Mist of Barovia is a character in itself. It's its own character. It has its own personality. It has its own way of doing things. And the great thing about that particular mist is it's like the absolutely best tool a dungeon master can have. It is a dungeon master fix-everything multi-purpose toolbox. It will literally solve the issues. When you need to drive them into a particular location, or keep them away from the borders of Barovia, or you need to bring in a new character, or you need a random encounter to show up, and it just sort of doesn't make sense, the fog can roll in, the mists roll in, and something happens. I've used the mist so many times to solve issues regarding running this adventure, and I suggest you do exactly the same thing. Why not? It's there for that purpose. Okay, the Tarokka deck. So this is where you're going to go and perform the Fortunes of Ravenloft. This is where you do your Tarokka card deck reading, and it's going to give you a whole bunch of information, such as Strahd's location inside Castle Ravenloft for the final encounter with Strahd, with the player's characters and Strahd. That's where he's going to be located in Castle Ravenloft. Now you might decide that he's going to be, if they go to Castle Ravenloft, that's his location when they first meet him. You could do it that way, but I wouldn't recommend doing it that way because I'm going to talk about the fact that Strahd needs to come into play much sooner than getting to the castle. Okay, you should be having Strahd show up much sooner than that. It will also give you, when you do your Tarokka card deck reading, the location of the Sun Sword, the Tome of Strahd, and the Holy Symbol of Ravenkind. These are special magic items. They are important. They are required to actually be successful. The players will find them incredibly helpful in getting through the adventure. So make sure you do all of that before you run the session. It will also give you the identity of a powerful ally that players can call on or that they will meet. So 5 different things you pull out of that. 3 magic items, where Strahd is, and a powerful ally. Okay, I know what you're going to say. Well, Fred, that Tarokka deck, it's hard to get in my country, or it's expensive, and I don't have the money. Well, fortunately for you, there are some solutions to that, and that is you can photocopy the cards. They're in the back of the book, so photocopy them, and then once you photocopy them, make sure you've enlarged them so they're big enough to be useful to you. You can make them bigger than standard size if you wanted to, but photocopy them enlarged, cut them out, and if you want, you can stick them onto a bit of cardboard or just use them in the paper version that you've already got. Okay, so this is the easiest way to deal with it if you can't afford the special cards and you can't buy them for whatever reason. Now, I've already done a video. Now, I know I'm going to have to come back to the Tarokka deck. A few people are probably going to say, I don't know how to do that. Can you show me? I will do that in another video if people ask me. It just really depends. Now, I did a video on the Curse of Strahd adventure hooks. My suggestion to you is go and check out the video I've already made on the adventure hooks. I would select more than one. Don't just pick up one of those hooks. Use multiple hooks to actually engage your players, get them into the adventure, get them invested, and sticking with the goals that ahead. So yes, I've already got a video on that topic if you want. Now, when it comes to, it's really tempting to give the players characters, or give the players the map of Barovia. Don't give the players a full map of Barovia till they find someone they can buy the map from, or it would make sense that they find a map of Barovia, the basic location and areas. So don't just give it out to them, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to make the land of Barovia a strange, alien and unknown location. And if they know where things are, it's too easy. Don't do that. Not straight away. Magic works very differently in the land of Barovia. It's twisted and malformed, and there's information in the book about how to describe your spells. So, for example, something like Fine Steed, it would show up as like a skeletal horse rather than a flesh horse. You are in a location and an adventure that's a horror, right? So play with that as much as you like. You can describe it however you like, but mix up the magic. Everything has been warped and distorted by the fact that this is a demiplane of horror. Also, Barovian, these are the people of Barovia. Barovian shells are soulless folk. They have little emotion and deliberately make them flat. Don't build out a lot of information on them. Make them plain. When you run those characters, you don't need to use a lot of emotion. You want them to be sort of like, they're just robotic. They just go through the world. They are full of fear but nothing else. You know, when things happen to them, they don't cry. The only thing they seem to be able to exhibit is fear and nothing else. So they are flat paper characters. Don't get too involved with them. There are other characters within the adventure that are not the shells, that do actually have souls. You can play them very differently. Okay, so I've covered that. Now, the Vastini. These are Strahd's spies. They're like gypsy folk. You will probably find yourself using them more than a few times. Bear in mind they are servants of Strahd, and they are also spies, and they should always be keeping an eye on the player's characters. They should be sort of in the background. They might not necessarily engage in a battle or a fight. There might be a conversation. They might be just seen from afar, but they are part of the spy network that Strahd uses. Now, it's not just the Festini. Animals, Strahd has access to powerful spells, so he can scry. Strahd should really have all the information about the player's characters all the time. There's probably very little that they can get away with doing without Strahd knowing about it, because one, the Vastini, those who are terrified of Strahd, will reveal information to Strahd just so he will leave them alone. Even the animals in this location, things like bats, wolves, and birds, he has under his control. So just remember that. Make sure you use that as much as you possibly can, so that you can make the adventure seem hard to sort of escape, I guess. Okay, now this is a Blinsky doll. Now the reason I've put up the Blinsky doll is this. Use the random encounters. I know a lot of people don't like the idea of using random encounters for day or night. There are day or night random encounters in the adventure. Use them to make the adventure more unpredictable. That will really help shake things up. I've used them. They help. Now remember, when you pick a random encounter and it lists monsters, it does not have to turn into a combat. You could use them, but the actual fact is, when they see something horrific that they think is a fight and it doesn't turn into a fight, and they leave, you know, if a monster shows up and they battle it or they don't battle it and then it goes somewhere else, they're always thinking, is it going to return? When is it going to show up? When we have a rest, right? As soon as we try to rest and to make camp, those things are going to show up and try and butcher us. And our dungeon master is going to kill off our characters or some horrible thing like that. But use it as much as you possibly can. So that's why I suggest use random encounters. Now the other thing I would suggest you do is create some of your own random encounters. These are encounters that don't have to be combat focused. They can just be to scare the players. Scare the players, you scare the characters. Now, how did I do this in my adventure? Well, what I did is I used the Blinsky dolls. I used many different strategies, but I used the Blinsky dolls in particular, and they would pick up Blinsky dolls, and some of them would move, some of them would talk to them, some of them would do nothing, and they would be expecting it to come to life, and it didn't. Sometimes they would put them in their backpack, and they would disappear. Sometimes the Blinsky doll would disappear, and some of their equipment in their pack would disappear. Sometimes I'd run it like a Chucky doll, you know, where it would come up and it would do things that would sort of scare them. Not necessarily attack them, because a Blinsky doll isn't necessarily the most dangerous thing that they could fight. But I did have like a whole bunch of them, like a pile of flying Blinsky dolls at one point, and that scared the bejesus out of a whole bunch of my players. And so at that point, once I'd done that enough, they wouldn't pick up the Blinsky dolls, and not only that, they burnt them. They would destroy them. They would run from them. They would not touch them. So I was successful in making them pretty paranoid, actually. I think they were definitely paranoid about what would happen next with those Blinsky dolls. Alright, when it comes to maps, let's talk about maps. Study the Barovia area map. I've already said that, so you know where everything is. So you know where it's all placed. But there are 2 main villages or towns to explore, and it's really important to make sure that you understand how they work. The first one you're going to come across is the village of Barovia. Now the village of Barovia is all but dead. It's pretty much abandoned. It's mostly boarded over. There's hardly anybody actually living here anymore, so therefore you don't have to worry about bringing in a lot of NPCs. Strahd has strangled the village of Barovia. He has total control of it. It's only a matter of time before literally everybody is going to be dead. Okay, that's really what he's been working towards. There's another village which is quite different to Barovia, but given enough time it might wind up being in the same place. Now the reason I say make sure to print out the village of Barovia and the village of Vallaki, which I'm going to talk about in a second, is it helps you, if you show those maps to the players, it gives them an idea of where things are. I knew when I was trying to describe things to my players, they found it difficult to place where the death house was, where the burgomaster's mansion was, where other locations within the town were. So printing out a map that you can present the players, it's not a big location. You don't have to give them the map straight away, but as soon as they start asking those questions, have it available and ready to use. Let's talk about the town of Vallaki. Now the thing with Vallaki is it's very different. It's well populated, there's lots of people there, it's heavily guarded, there's quite a large contingent of guards in this location, but it's not all but dead. There are lots of people living in fear, and that fear is covered by the insistence of always viewing the world as being good and being positive, and sunshine is always, everything is fine. It's denial of the real fact that their lives are under threat from a great huge shadow, and that is the vampire Strahd. So make sure you have that map. I found my players asking me key questions about where things were in relation to another place in Vallaki. My own players, when they ran through this, explored the place completely, and then things went really badly and the whole place got completely decimated, and it was like a ghost town at the end, and they felt terribly ashamed that they were responsible for that taking place, because it was their actions that spurned it, and they weren't able to stop it happening. So it's interesting how any kind of adventure can play out, and that's what happened in my group. So make sure you have that map available and ready to go when you need it. Right, there are some key NPCs that I want to talk about. There are, I would say, there's 5 key NPCs. Strahd as being the most important one, but the next one in terms of important NPCs is Irina Kolyana. Irina Kolyana is basically the reincarnated soul of Strahd's obsession. He's obsessed with this particular soul, and Irina is the one that he wants. He's trying to turn her into a vampire. The players' characters are going to be trying to make sure that doesn't happen. How they do that is really up to you. My players' characters really had a rough time with trying to protect Irina. In fact, they did such a bad job of it that Irina ran away from them, and they then had to try and save her another way, because Strahd was moving on her location, and they were no longer close enough to protect her anymore. So make sure you have a good understanding of Irina. The next one is Esmeralda. Esmeralda is essentially, or Esmeralda de Avenia. I don't know if I've got the pronunciation right, but Esmeralda is a key ally for the party, most likely going to be more useful to the party than anybody else. I can't count the number of times that Esmeralda saved the party from certain death just because of her level. She's got a lot of magic, she's got a high level, and she's willing to help them provided they don't act like dicks, essentially. Okay, she's a monster hunter, and right now she's trying to track down her mentor, which is Rudolf van Richten, a very famous vampire and monster hunter. So make sure you have a good understanding of how her stat block works so you can play her, which is why I would recommend photocopying the stat block so you've got access to it and it's easy. You can pin it to your or stick it on with blue tag onto your Dungeon Master screen, or just have it in front of you. Now, Rudolph van Richten is a really famous character. This particular character has showed up in previous Ravenloft adventures. And this is the famous vampire hunter, Rudolph van Richten. Strahd is looking for Rudolph, and so is Esmeralda. The players, when they interact with Rudolph, won't actually know him as Rudolph. It'll be Richtevo, I believe it is. He disguises himself. He does not reveal his identity. Not to the very last scene, the very last part of the adventure, when things are starting to heat up and it's time to deal with Strahd for the last time, hopefully. That's when Rudolph is likely to show up. But they will meet him throughout the adventure. They just won't know that it's Rudolph van Richten. So make sure you know as much as you can about Rudolph. And another character you're probably going to have a lot of interactions with, and that's Madame Eva. Is it Eva? Eva. Eva? Eva. I think it's Eva. This is an ally or an enemy. The players in my group kind of viewed Madame Eva as potentially an ally, but maybe also an enemy. They did not trust her completely. She is supposed to work for Strahd, but she is actually not working for Strahd. She has her own motivations. Her motivation is to bring Strahd to his end. Problem is that that's easier said than done, okay? So she will do the fortune telling. She is the fortune teller. She's the one that they can go and see and do a Tarokka card reading. Now, I did a Tarokka card reading in terms of what is detailed in the CoS of Strahd in the book. It sort of gives you some information about what to do. And I did that with my players. But they came back and they would talk to Madame Eva, and I would do a reading individually for them, telling them what their potential future was. Some of their futures came true. A lot of their futures did not come true because they were forewarned, you might say. So it helps sort of give the players a feeling that although they're all in the same boat, that they are they do have their own sort of story that's playing out while you're running the main campaign. Don't get lost. This is an adventure for a group, not for individuals. So that is Madame Eva. I want to make it really clear, because I'm almost finished. I want you to treat the book as a general guide and let all of it hang out if the players take a particular action. Once you start running this, it's your adventure, it's the player's adventure. The book is just a guide. You do not have to do things the way the book has laid it out. It is essentially just a collection of NPCs, locations, and a basic sort of story arc. But the story might end many different ways. It can end with Strahd dying. It can end with Strahd not perishing. It can end in a way that you had not even considered. I have heard of many different ways of this adventure finishing and playing out. So don't get fixed that everything has to work a particular way. It's just a guide. Print out a copy of, I already talked about printing out a copy of the Barovia village map, and that's essentially so you can help place the death house. The other thing is you need to understand horror. So if you're not particularly good, or you're not familiar with running a horror role-play game, then my suggestion to you is develop some strategies for doing that, okay? So create your own method of developing and role-playing a horror story. So storytelling for horror is very different to storytelling for Dungeons & Dragons fantasy. Now, I'm going to give you just a couple of suggestions. If you want more, you need to let me know, and I will give you that information if you want in a different video. It's not enough time right now. Create a method of storytelling for horror. Speak slowly. Allow for pauses. Slow down the pace of your game. Don't worry about sessions finishing under a certain time frame. It is not unusual for the CoS of Strahd to take more than a year to run. just because, particularly even if you're playing every week. Describe the sounds of things that are moving, but they can't see them. So maybe they hear like a window slam or a door close or the creaking of anything. Maybe they can hear things moving around or people talking, but when they go there, there's nothing there. All those things that build up tension. Maybe they can tell the temperature is changing. It's getting colder. Maybe it's a smell, the smell of decay and flesh and death. Those things are really going to help. So make sure, this is why I say go and watch horror movies or read a horror story, because it will help you develop that skill. Don't show the monsters, really important. Old horror movies did this all the time. Don't show the monsters too early. Always hold off as long as you can. And the best way to actually develop horror is to have a monster show up and then disappear or run away, and they didn't kill it. And they might hunt for it and try to look for it, but they can't find it. They're always going to be worried that it's going to return when they are most vulnerable. So those sort of strategies will help you a lot. Okay, now I guess that the one thing I want to talk about is Strahd before we finish off. Almost done. Strahd should appear very early on in the story. Now, he does not have to show up and engage in combat or fight the player's characters. But you want to scare the bejesus. They know that Strahd is powerful. He's a vampire. Do it when they are low level, when they are level 1 or 2 or 3. And it might be, when I presented Strahd, the first time they met Strahd was in rode past in a black carriage. They never actually saw him, because the windows were covered. But they suspected that Strahd was in the carriage. And then later on, the carriage showed up again, and it stopped right beside one of them when they were walking along the road and offered them a ride. Some of them got into the carriage, and some of them did not. And I can tell you, my whole table was freaking out when one of them said, "Yeah, I'll come with you." There was just panic amongst everybody. So make sure Strahd shows up and plan to adjust the combats if they become too easy. The problem is, at low level, it's easy to challenge and scare your players. You're not necessarily trying to kill the players' characters, okay? But you're trying to challenge them and make things difficult and scary and make it clear that combat is not necessarily the best option. A lot of my players had their characters running away from combat early on because they were so fragile and the things they came across were just so deadly and dangerous. So as they level up, that threat level is going to change. So my suggestion is change things up when you need to. If it's too easy, add monsters. If it's not working out, change the dynamics of the environment, change the goals and strategies that you're using. Those sorts of things are really important. Lastly, and that is collect your gear, okay? Collect all your gear, whether you're going to use tokens or pawns or miniatures, or you're not going to use any of that sort of stuff. Are you going to use a mat? Are you going to use maps? Pick up your pencils and pens, you'll need those. Dice, Dungeon Master screen if you use a Dungeon Master screen, cards, books. Now I'm just showing you an image of a collection of different things I have used in my game. There's everything from my phone, the Monster Manual, Dungeon Master Guide, Player's Handbook. Maybe you just have a laptop. I've got a laptop and a tablet in there. Maybe you have a timer for timing things. I've got ball clips, paper clips, miniatures, tokens, all those things. Decide on what you think will be most useful to you when you're running your game. Okay? All right. That is everything I have to say on the Curse of Strahd and preparing for the Curse of Strahd, which is a lot. I've been talking for a long time. This is a long video. But if you found it helpful or informative, please share and like the video. Subscribe to my channel if you like this sort of content, because often I do videos for Dungeon Masters around a guide for working through a pre-generated adventure. The Curse of Strahd is not something I do often, but I am currently working through the Lost Mine of Phandelver, and yes, in the future you can expect to probably see more Curse of Strahd, because as I said, I love the adventure a lot. So Subscribe, hit the bell button to be notified when I go live and when I publish new videos. If you want to support me so I keep making videos like this, then make sure you watch this video and the other videos I've made on the Death House and the adventure hooks for Curse of Strahd. Okay, I have plenty of other videos you can go and check out. But thank you for watching this video. If you want to continue to support me, then look, I don't do Patreon, but down in the description, if you have an ad blocker, you can buy stuff from Amazon and the book depository. Buying stuff from there, you pay these exactly the same price. I get a small commission though, which helps me to continue sort of bringing in funding to make these videos happen and update my gear. Okay, now this is your opportunity in the live chat. Ask your questions, give your feedback, come and say hi to me, tell me your stories. We have time to do that. I am open for it. Let's do it. But if you're not part of the live stream and you can't use the chat box there, that's what the comment section is for. Okay, YouTube provided a comment section. Go and use it. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. I'm not gone. I just look like I'm gone. I just stopped talking. That's all it is. I'm just going to pull up my face. You will get to see me. Where is it? There's the camera. Okay, and am I sitting in the right place? Let's switch it over. Gotcha. All right, let's just switch back over so I can see the live chat. Whoa, there's a lot of feedback in there. Holy Toledo. We've got a full house. How's it going, everybody? Okay. All right, I got to work through this pretty quickly then. All right, I'm going to get closer because if I get closer, then it's easier for me to see. I'm getting old. My eyes are old, so I need to squint sometimes, and probably should have brought my glasses, but it doesn't quite work with text sometimes, I've discovered. Okay, so how's it going, Travis? Tarokka, yo, how's it going? Fire Lord Singer, how's it going? I saw your friend request on Facebook. Look, I'm not going to accept it because I've got a lot of people throwing me friend requests. Just jump onto the Facebook group and join it for HowtoDandD and we can talk there. It's nothing personal. It's just I've got to wind up with so many people on my friends list. Okay, Travis. No worries. Fred, Mike. Awesome brought this book a couple of weeks ago and I've been in the pre-planning stages. Well, this is all about planning for the Curse of Strahd. So yes. Good time to ask questions. Hopefully you're still around. Hi, Joe. Oscar. Hi, Oscar. Now, I know Oscar. Oscar has been running this adventure for multiple people and multiple groups. He's done it he probably knows more about running the Curse of Strahd than I do. Easily. I would say easily, he probably knows far more than I do. Just going to happen. If you do it a lot, it's going to happen, right? Dear Jesus, nice. I plan to run Curse of Strahd after Lost Mine of Phandelver. Hi, dear Jesus. Hey, thank you for sending me that email with all of the maps that are all sort of segmented because I've been wanting to print those all out. And then once I've printed them out at scale, which you've already done all the work because I'm not technically minded really, I'm going to use them for my Lost Mine of Phandelver Dungeon Master guides. I finally will have an opportunity to print them out in colour. And then I can show people the monster density and how things will interact when they're playing through certain sections of the Lost Mine of Phandelver. So those maps are super helpful and thank you a lot. No, it's not your... it didn't get delayed so much, dear Jesus. What had happened is there were 30 different slides I prepared for today and I got stuck. I was trying to get OBS to open up and it wouldn't open up and so I got stuck and that's why I was a bit slow starting. Okay, so it's not your fault in any way whatsoever. Never consider that. Slice of Scott, how's it going, Slice of Scott? Okay, you ran Death House for 2 sessions, had 1 session in Barovia, ended that session with Madam Ava, card reading, no idea what to expect this weekend. All right, okay. Well, look, who knows? They could go anywhere from there, right? They can go back to Barovia. They can go along the road. So it does open things up a lot, and this tends to happen. Dear Jesus, at Slice of Heaven, are your PCs starting off at level 1? Well, hopefully they did. The Death House would be a lot easier to deal with if they weren't. I think you'll find it would be pretty much a piece of cake, a bit of a walkthrough actually. Okay, Slice of Scott. No, they are level 6. We've been on a campaign for 1 year, threw a lot of extra stuff at them, okay? And Death House, like a gelatinous cube, and established a Mind Flayer henchman for Strahd. Nice, I like that, that's quite cool. I can just imagine Strahd using something like a Mind Flayer. That's a nice little twist. It certainly adds an element. You now have 2 masterminds working against the player's characters. Dear Jesus. Cool, I plan to have level 4 to 5 PCs, and we'll do the same as you did. Thanks for the info. Okay, good. All right, you guys are sharing information. This is one of the things that's great about my community, is that you guys share information about what you've done with each other, which is awesome. Slice of Scott. When they left Death House, I had Strahd appear from the mists and give an epic speech. Then a Mind Flayer killed a guest PC, leaving them all shocked and horrified. Nice one. Well, that would scare them. I certainly think that would certainly make it clear that they need to be careful. Dear Jesus. Oh, snap. Time for vengeance. Yeah, that's right. I bet you, I know a few of my players were, at the end, they were so livid with Strahd, they really wanted his head. Okay, what else have we got here? Dear Jesus, I plan to have PC join them, who was Strahd in disguise. Oh dear, maybe difficult, but I will give it a shot. Yeah, well, as long as you don't give away too much, it'll work. If you give away too much, it'll be clear that he is Strahd. Slice of Scott. I read in a Dritz novel that gelatinous cubes remains make for great hair gel. Oh, really? On a previous session, a PC had a date on a date on Jalaxel's ship. So after they killed the cube, I had a flashback scene. Oh, okay, all right. Jalaxel used the cube remains to fix his hat hair. Oh gosh, hilarious. That's very, very funny. So now the PCs have their hair gel. That is pretty awesome. That is pretty awesome. Okay, dear Jesus, what do you got here? Mike's maps are awesome. I've got Lost Mine of Phandelver and the Curse of Strahd. Oh, I like it. All right. Yes, that sounds awesome. I love that. That's so great. Now, where are we? We've got the gel maps. I'm just scrolling down, making sure I'm almost to the bottom here. Bound to be a few people who are throwing in new comments. Slice of Scott. I've heard that the TV show Dark Shadows has a lot of similarities with Strahd's story. Well, possibly. It's not an uncommon story, so yeah, it's possible that might be what's going on here. Ugly Weirdo. Mist is such a cheat. It might seem like a cheat, but it's something that you should use. Use it. Firelord Singer, sorry. Yeah, it's all right, bro. It's just too many people to keep track of. Pear Shaman, what's up, my noobs? I think we're talking about the Curse of Strahd. That's what's up. Oscar's saying hi. Matt Nerdy, hello. How's it going, Matt? Welcome to the live stream. Joe, he's gone? Oh no, he's not. No, he's still around. Okay, good. That's fine. Okay, what do we got here? This is Peter Bohr. Thank you for doing this. I've been watching your Lost Mine of Phandelver videos for inspiration on how to run it for my new PCs. I'll be leading them into Barovia near the end. Thank you. You are welcome. I'm glad I could help. Remember those videos, the hooks, the adventure hooks for the Curse of Strahd and the Death House video. That'll be helpful to you. Slice of Scott. I introduced the game of of curing into my game. I introduced the game of curling into my game. It's been hinted that Strahd will host a curling tournament. A curling tournament? A hair curling tournament. Oh, you are so funny. A hair curling tournament in a fortnight in order to help woo Irina. Hoping to use the event to showcase different hair curling techniques. Oh my gosh, you are a laugh. Slice of Scott, that's so funny. Different sides of Strahd's character. I didn't actually play Strahd as a character who is evil. My players always found that Strahd was very nice to them. But everybody else was saying, no, 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 he's a villain. He's a bad, bad, bad man. He's a vampire. He does horrible things. The rest of us live under his yoke. So my players' characters were really torn. My players in particular were torn about what to sort of make of all of this. Oscar, what do you got here? Fred, tomorrow I'm thinking on throwing Strahd to my level 9 PCs. They are just on the beginning of an encounter with 3 mages and 3 hellhounds. So the scenario is in the bar of Barovia. Oh my gosh. You brought in a bar fight with mages and hellhounds in a bar. Oh gosh. So Strahd with 4 vampires spawn, knocking on the door and asking if they can enter. Of course, everybody's going to say, no, no. Oscar, you are so evil. That is so naughty. I love it though. I think it's great. Not doing Strahd soon. What's that? Because vampires can't get inside the house without an invitation. Exactly, right. That's the whole idea is unless they get invited, they can't come in. What's that, Joe? Not doing Strahd soon, but love the content. Thanks, Fred. You're welcome, Joe. Brandon, hello, how's it going? I am late. Well, problem is I'm running late anyway. We're into at least an hour now, so you do have an opportunity to ask questions if you're still around. How are you, mate? I'm all right. The week was rough, but I get to play Dungeons and Dragons at the end of the night. I'm going to go and cook some food shortly and have some lunch, but I get to go and play Dungeons and Dragons with my mates at the end of the night, so that's good. I'm looking forward to it. I'm ready for it. Pesham, I'm thinking of playing Strahd like the Chow from the movie from The Hangover. Like Chow from the movie Hangover. I get it. That's different. Someone's having a good laugh. I think it's pretty funny though. Brandon, what do you got here? I have one general complaint about the Curse of Strahd. Needle blights absolutely fireball to the 9th level of hell every single needle blight. Yep. Look, here's the thing. I threw needle blights at my players' characters, and yes, they used fireball to dispose of them easily. Okay? And then I brought more needle blights, and they fireballed those. And I just kept I just ignored the number of needle blights that they had listed in the book until I whittled them down, and then they started finding themselves in a really bad situation where they had to run. I think they jumped on a wagon and rode for their lives, dragging those members who had fallen into the wagon with them, because it was the only way to deal with the needle blights. There were so many. I just overwhelmed them with needle blights, because otherwise, by the time they get to the Wizard's Winery, needle blights are a pushover, right? So I just keep throwing needle blights at them. Those characters that didn't make it to the wagon died. I'm sorry, they died. Their characters still came into play, but I had a bit of twist on that. I mucked with them a bit. Messed with their heads. Peter Bohr, how would you recommend reflavoring Nesna to help bridge into Curse of Strahd? Well, you don't need to worry about reflavoring Nesna that much. I mean, are you bringing Nesna, the Black Spider, into the Curse of Strahd as an NPC. If he's still alive, he could follow them into the tunnels. Maybe the tunnels, it leads underground, right? The Wave Echo Cave leads underground. As they're exploring the underground river, a mist rolls in, and you bring them into Barovia that way if you want to. So I think that's probably one way of doing it. You could have Nesna would probably not form an alliance with Strahd, because he would also be stuck and at the mercy of that rather evil vampire. So I don't feel like he would form an alliance with Strahd. But that's one way you could bring Nesna into the game, as he follows them, if he didn't get killed, into the mists. As I said, the mist is a fix for everything. Okay, what else we got here? Oscar. About the knocking of the door, they are trying to pass as adventurers, Strahd and his four spawns. Okay, so they're not actually, he's not introducing himself as I am Strahd and here are my vampire spawn. They are disguised in some way. So, right, so that's good, Oscar. You are so naughty. You are very naughty. Brandon, my party made it there at level 6 to 6. No wizard. It felt terrifying. Oh, okay. I'm not quite sure what that's about, but I think you're talking about the Wizard's Winery, right? Dear Jesus is talking to Peter. Just an idea, but I was going to have a travelling caravan arrive to Phandalin, luring people to Barovia. Yes, the Vistini often leave Barovia, enter different worlds, and entice and encourage people to come with them. There is an adventure hook that you could use that's around the Vistini, an invitation to come with them from their master, or you could create one of your own. Maybe they decide they're going to join the Vistini, this caravan, and they might not be saying that they're going back to Barovia, but when they travel with them, the mists roll in. Slice of Scott. For a funny NPC, I have a character named Poe, who walks around Barovia and Vallaki, spouting Edgar Allan Poe poems. Oh gosh. So yeah, make it your own. Do what you want with it. Make it interesting. I had so much fun with the Curse of Strahd. I think I have to say that I grew as a dungeon master. Running this adventure got me over a lot of my preconceived beliefs about how to run a Dungeons and Dragons adventure. And my beliefs and concerns around death and what I should do and what I shouldn't do are gone. And that's because I ran the Curse of Strahd and I allowed myself open to just going with the flow. And it really did help me a lot. Which is why I think I started this, because I was running the Curse of Strahd when I first made this YouTube channel. I think that's what really inspired me to a large extent to go and do it, because all of my fears were pretty much gone by the time I had got halfway through this adventure. By the time I had completed the adventure, I didn't worry about nothing. I just don't worry about nothing anymore. Okay? Alright, I think that's going to be where we'll stop. There are no more questions, no more feedback. I'm going to head off, so have a good night, a good day, good afternoon, good morning, whatever it is. Look after yourself, look after your family, and I will catch you probably tomorrow because it's my day off. I'm going to be working on my air elemental. So this is sort of constructing my own or crafting my own miniature. So that's what I'm going to be doing tomorrow. So you can come and chat about anything you like if you want tomorrow at about the same time. So I'll see you later.